Yamunatiravanachari Yamunatiravanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa, Parvajaka Ashtotartha Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa, Parvajaka Ashtotartha Sri Srimad Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Lord Shri Ram Ki Jai, Sita Ram Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. So we have a special program tonight because it is the appearance day of Lord Ramchandra. This is an article I wrote for Back to Godhead magazine. Some of you may have heard that magazine. It is, Srila Prabhupada started his movement with Back to Godhead magazine in India. And when he came to America, he enjoined his followers to pick it up again after a little while. After in 1966, they started again. And I got to work on the magazine from 75 till, well, the early 80s, 82, 83, like that. And I wrote this article, which is a summary of the Ramayana. Actually, the occasion was we had a lot of plays going on in America at that time. We had a whole troupe centered in New York. And we had some professional actors join and become initiated, Rasagya and Lohitaksha. And anyway, so they had created a little play that summarized the Ram Leela. And they went to New Vrindavan, and they put it on, and it was filmed. And then it became, video in those days, they were able to distribute it. So I had I think I had the film script or something, and I condensed it into this little account. So this is Hare Krishna. So here's a little summary of the Ramayana story. It won't last more than probably 10 minutes to read. The Vedic literature describes how Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appears in the material world throughout history to eradicate evil, establish the principles of religion, and enliven his devotees. Sometimes he comes himself, but more often he expands as an incarnation who manifests a certain portion of his supreme glories. Among these incarnations, one of the best known and most beloved is Lord Ramchandra, the hero of the Ramayana, a Sanskrit epic written by the great sage Valmiki. Recently, ISKCON Television, the team of devotees that produces television programs on Krishna conscious topics, shot a video version of Lord Ram's pastimes. Under the direction of Nrsimhananda Das, who has worked extensively with professional TV studios in Hollywood, ITV staged an all-devotee Ramayana at the Hare Krishna movement's New Vrindavan farm community in West Virginia. Srila Prabhupada's Palace of Gold and the woodsy New Vrindavan landscape provided the perfect setting. The Sringananda adapted a script condensed from the original Ramayana by Nanda Kishore Das, a seasoned Krishna conscious director and actor. What follows is a synopsis of the plot with highlights of the ITV production. Millions of years ago, a king named Dasharatha ruled the world from his capital city, Ayodhya, which lies about midway between present-day Calcutta and New Delhi. By his queens, Dasharatha had many sons, but the jewel among them was Ramchandra, the personality of Godhead himself. Even from his youth, Ram possessed all the qualities of a leader. His magnanimity was unrivaled, as were his religious wisdom, prowess in fighting, and freedom from greed for the privileges of power. His strength knew no limit. He won the hand of Sita Devi, the goddess of fortune herself, by breaking a huge bow his rival suitors couldn't even lift. When the time came for King Dasharatha to retire, he naturally chose as his successor his eldest and most qualified son, Ram. All Ayodhya rejoiced at hearing the news and prepared for the coronation of the beloved prince. But the coronation was not to be. Kaikeyi, one of Dasharatha's queens, was incited by a malicious maidservant to block Ram's ascendance to the throne. Sometime before, Dasharatha had promised Kaikeyi 2 boons, but she had asked that they be deferred. Now, blinded by envy, Kaikeyi held Dasharatha to his word and forced him to fulfill 2 wishes. First, she wanted Ram exiled to the forest for 14 years. And second, she wanted her own son, Bharat, crowned king of Ayodhya. Dasharatha felt Kaikeyi's demands to be like a thunderbolt striking his head. How could he banish his most beloved son, Ram, on the eve of his coronation? What would become of Ayodhya? What would become of Sita? Dasharatha saw only calamity on all sides, yet his word was his very life, and he yielded to Kaikeyi's will. Ram accepted his exile cheerfully, but he worried that his father and mother might die of grief. His father did in fact die of despair soon after Ram left Ayodhya. Nonetheless, Ram was determined to follow his father's order, come what may. When Ram told Sita and his brother Lakshman of the impending exile, they insisted on accompanying him. Thus Lord Ram, the personification of righteousness, Sita Devi, the personification of faithfulness, and Lakshman, the personification of fraternal devotion, entered the Dandaka forest for the 14-year ordeal. Of course, since Ram and Lakshman were none other than the personality of Godhead and his first expansion, their stay in the Dandaka forest proved to be no ordeal at all. For some time, they and Sita lived peacefully and happily, enjoying nature's gifts and making friends with many sages who had repaired to the forest for seclusion and meditation. But then came a fateful turn of events. One day, a hideous man-eating demoness named Shurpanakha came upon Ram's cottage. Overwhelmed with lust at seeing Ram's handsome figure, she attempted to seduce him. When that failed, she turned to Lakshman, but both he and Ram ridiculed her. Infuriated, Shurpanakha rushed toward Sita to devour her. Ram stopped Shurpanakha and had Lakshman cut off her nose and ears to teach her a lesson. Then the demoness ran into the forest, screaming in agony and vowing that her brother Ravana would avenge her humiliation. Ravana was the king of the man-eaters. By practicing severe austerities, he had won from Lord Brahma, the chief demigod, several boons that gave him near invincibility. From his kingdom on Lanka, the island off the southern tip of India, the fearsome Ravana and his man-eating minions would roam the earth and the heavens, pillaging, raping, and devouring at will. Ravana cared for neither God, nor law, nor morality. Always intoxicated by pride and arrogance, as well as by strong drink, Ravana was sin incarnate. Ravana had several brothers who were equal to him in vileness. One of these, named Kara, lived in a part of the Dandaka forest near Ram's cottage and led an army of man-eaters who fed on the flesh of saintly hermits. From Ram's cottage, Shurpanakha fled to Kara, and when he saw what Lakshman had done to his sister, he flew into a rage and sent out 14,000 of his formidable warriors to slay Ram and Lakshman. But Kara didn't realize with whom he was dealing. Ram's arrows, like shafts of fire, flew from his golden bow with unerring accuracy, annihilating Kara and his army. A lone survivor escaped to Lanka to tell Ravana of the disaster wrought by the supernatural valor of Ram. Hearing of Ram's exploits, Ravana thought it wise to adopt a devious tactic. Rather than confront Ram directly, Ravana would kidnap Ram's beloved Sita so that Ram would die of a broken heart. Not only would this plan avenge the humiliation of Shurpanakha and the slaughter of Kara and the 14,000 warriors, but it would also provide Ravana with the consummate object for his lust, the chaste and beautiful Sita. Ravana paid a visit to his warlord, Maricha. Like many other demons, Maricha could change his form at will. Ravana ordered him to take the form of an irresistibly charming deer and then frisk before Sita. When the deer would run into the forest, Ravana hoped Sita would insist that Ram and Lakshman capture it for her. Left alone, Sita would then be easy prey for Ravana. The ruse worked, and Ravana came before the lone Sita disguised as a robed renunciant. Sita welcomed him into the cottage and offered him refreshment. But suddenly, Ravana cast off his disguise and declared his purpose. Despite Sita's piteous entreaties and prophetic warnings, Ravana abducted Sita and carried her off toward Lanka. Along the way, Ravana met and mortally wounded Jatayu, a huge bird who was a lifelong friend of King Dasharatha's. Jatayu tried to stop Ravana, but was no match for the world-conquering demon. When Ram and Lakshman discovered that Sita had been kidnapped, they were overcome with grief. In anguish, they searched everywhere, finally coming upon the dying Jatayu, who told them with his last breath that it was Ravana who had made off with Sita. Later, Ram learned that a certain tribe of monkey warriors, headed by Hanuman and Sugriva, could find Ravana's kingdom and help Ram regain Sita. Ram and Lakshman sealed an alliance with the monkey warriors and found them to be fiercely devoted followers. Among them all, Hanuman stands as the very emblem of the faithful, dedicated servant. Being the son of the wind god, Hanuman could fly, and when he learned that Ravana's kingdom lay on the island of Lanka, he used his prodigious strength to leap over the sea. All he knew was that he must find Sita and help retrieve her for Ram. Shrinking himself down to the size of a cat, Hanuman walked freely through the fabulous city of Lanka, reconnoitering its defenses. Finally, he found Sita in the heart of a dense forest of Ashoka trees. She was wan and weak, racked with grief at her separation from her beloved Ram. Because of a demigod's curse, Ravana had been unable to force himself upon her, and she had resisted all his advances. Though the torment had taken its toll, she was still radiant with beauty. Hanuman gave Sita one of Ram's rings to prove he was a messenger, not a man-eater. Then the noble monkey soothed Sita with sweet remembrances of her lord. Hanuman assured her that Ram would soon rescue her, and she sent him forth with one of her pearls, so that Ram would know that Hanuman had indeed found her. Before leaving Lanka, the jubilant Hanuman set fire to large sections of the city and slew thousands of Ravana's soldiers. Upon hearing Hanuman's report, Ram at once prepared to invade Lanka. He led the army of monkey warriors to the sea and told Sugriva to build a bridge of boulders across to Lanka. The faithful monkeys had no idea how such a feat could be accomplished, but they dutifully began heaving huge rocks into the ocean, and Ram made them float by his divine energy. Ram's legions of monkey warriors marched across the miraculous bridge to Lanka, and soon the great siege began. Ravana's men were trained in the art of war and armed with bows and arrows, swords, lances, tridents, and other such weapons. The untrained monkeys had only boulders and tree trunks for weapons, but they had one insuperable advantage. They were empowered by Lord Ram, the personality of Godhead himself. For some days the two armies fought ferociously with heavy casualties on both sides, and finally Ram's forces routed the man-eaters. At last Ravana himself had to confront Ram. Even now the demon wouldn't believe his power could be cut down. Ram rebuked Ravana for cravenly kidnapping Sita in his absence, and the demon in turn cast low insults at the Lord. The furious battle that then ensued between Ram and Ravana lasted for days without let-up. The earth, the seas, and the heavens were disturbed by the sheer force of their combat, and various astronomical events portended the imminent defeat of Ravana. Finally, the Lord released an arrow from his bow that struck Ravana's heart like a nuclear bomb. The demon tumbled to the ground, vomiting blood. Having at last rid the world of the curse of Ravana, Ram installed Vibhishan, Ravana's pious brother, as king of Lanka. Rama went at once to the Ashoka Grove to find Sita. Joyously reunited, they flew back to Ayodhya in a glorious airplane bedecked with flowers. At last, Lord Ramchandra had retrieved Sita. The 14-year exile was over, and the long-awaited coronation could take place. Sita Ram Ki Jai. So, thank you for listening to that. I wrote that over 40 years ago. Yeah. I used to be able to write pretty well. I'm out of breath. Hare Krishna. So we'll have some time, we'll read Bhagavad Gita, continuing with our investigation of the 6th chapter. So we did that one. I think we're on text 38. Maybe you can confirm. 38? Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. Sorry about that. On this, we'll be on page 291. On this 16th day of April, 2024, in San Diego, a reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 6, entitled Dhyāna-yoga, the yoga of meditation, text 38 on page 291. Kachin no bhaya vibrashtash chinnabhram ivanashyati apratishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanakpati kachinno bhaya vibrashtash chinnabhram ivanashyati apratishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanakpati kachinno bhaya vibrashtash chinnabhram ivanashyati apratishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanakpati kachinno bhaya vibrashtash chinnabhram ivanashyati apratishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanakpati. Kachinno bhaya vibrashtash chinnabhram ivanashyati apratishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanakpati. Bhushan. Kachinno bhaya vibrashtash chinnabhram ivanashyati Apratishto mahabaho vimuno brahmanakpati. Okay, one more. Who wants to chant? Go ahead, Nelson. Kachinno bhaya vibrashtash chinna brahmiva nashyati apratishto mahabaho vibundho brahmanakpati. Okay. Kachinno vaya vibrashtas chinna brahmiva nashyati apratishto mahabaho vimudho brahmanakpati. Word by words. Kachit, whether, na, not, ubaya, both, vibrashtaha, deviated from, chinna, torn, abram, cloud, eva, like, nashyati, perishes, apratishtaha, without any position, mahabaho, almighty armed Krishna, vimudaha, bewildered, brahmanaha, of transcendence, pati, on the path. Translation. So this is still Arjuna speaking, basically saying he's not able to practice what Krishna has taught him here. Almighty armed Krishna, does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success and perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere? So I'm going to read the translation to the previous verse because it's as follows. Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist who in the beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism? Okay, purport to 38. There are two ways to progress. Those who are materialists have no interest in transcendence. Therefore, they are more interested in material advancement by economic development or in promotion to the higher planets by appropriate work. When one takes to the path of transcendence, one has to cease all material activities and sacrifice all forms of so-called material happiness. If the aspiring transcendentalist fails, then he apparently loses both ways. In other words, he can enjoy neither material happiness nor spiritual success. He has no position. He's like a riven cloud. A cloud in the sky sometimes deviates from a small cloud and joins a big one. But if it cannot join a big one, then it is blown away by the wind and becomes a non-entity in the vast sky. The Brahmanakpati is the path of transcendental realization through knowing oneself to be spiritual in essence, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, who is manifested as Brahman, Paramātmā, and Bhagavan. Lord Śrī Kṛṣṇa is the fullest manifestation of the Supreme Absolute Truth, and therefore one who is surrendered to the Supreme Person is a successful transcendentalist. To reach this goal of life through Brahman and Paramātmā realization takes many, many births, bahunam janmanam ante. Therefore, the supermost path of transcendental realization is bhakti-yoga, or Krishna consciousness, the direct method. Om jnana timirandasya jnanandana shalakaya chakshu unmidatam mena tasmai Śrī Gurave namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Śrī Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, just to bring us up to date with the context here, Krishna has described the process of Ashtanga Yoga. Ashtanga means 8 limbs. It begins with yama and niyama, the don'ts and the do's. In any process, there are things we have to avoid and things we have to accept if we want to progress. So, don'ts and the do's, and then comes asana, because you're going to be doing a lot of meditation, and that means sitting very quietly and trying to control the mind. So you have to learn how to sit, and that includes, he describes that, sit with your back straight and look at the place between your eyebrows, and then you also practice pranayama. Pranayama is the 4th thing. You get yama, the don'ts, niyama, the do's, and asana, sitting posture, and then pranayama, control of the breath. Then comes pratyahara, this is the 5th element, which means withdrawing the senses from the sense objects. Now, of course, you're sitting there thinking, so the idea is you maybe be remembering some pleasant thing that you saw or heard or tasted or touched, whatever. And that has to be eradicated. You have to withdraw the senses, withdraw the mind from those memories. And you're already in isolation, so you're hopefully not being tempted. Now, it's a process, it's a difficult process to do, obviously. But if you're successful in that, and maybe you're chanting Om, you're doing it, then you start the process of dharana, which means concentration. You take the mind and put it on the super soul, and then it wanders and bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. It's an effort. And if you're able to progress with that, then you come to the point of actual meditation, dhyāna. This is the 7th. And then you're actually thinking of the super soul for periods of time during the day, but you're not perfect yet, you're not completely absorbed. And then if you achieve samadhi, that's the 8th thing, and then you're kind of successful. And I think we read last time, Krishna describes samadhi. And very attractive. Seems like a good goal to reach. It's on page 275 it begins. Text 20 to 23. So four verses. 3.5 it looks like. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self, capital S self, the super soul, by the pure mind, and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of the greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. So, sounds pretty attractive, you see. But don't forget the preliminaries to try to get there. It's very clear in the purports, and Arjuna also is that in the modern age, it's very hard to achieve this perfection. But we should know that these qualities that appear, the boundless happiness, the being unshaken in the midst of greatest difficulty, this is also there in bhakti-yoga, and the higher stages of bhakti-yoga. And on the morning classes, we're hearing about Prahlad Maharaj, who personifies this yoga. He's actually the epitome, the example for meditating on Krishna, for being absorbed in thought of Krishna. But he's a bhakti yogi. And then in the interactions with his father, he's completely fearless. He's undisturbed. In fact, there's this monstrous demon who happens to be his father. He doesn't even call him father until he's dead. And he's preaching pure bhakti to this demon, the last thing he wants to hear. And all kinds of ways he's trying to, at one point, Prahlad, what's the best thing you learned today? Oh, the 9 processes of bhakti. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Swaranam, Padaseva. You can imagine the demon Hiranyakashipu hearing that coming from his son. Where did he get all this from? He learned it before he was born. He learned it in the womb from now. Anyway, it goes on like that, and his father says, okay, to the henchmen, these are all Rakshasas also, man-eating demons. Okay, kill him. And they tried all kinds of ways to kill him. Little fragile little boy, 5-year-old boy. He was completely undisturbed. He was just meditating, completely absorbed and thinking of Krishna. They threw him off a cliff. They put him under the feet of the elephants. They tried to, have snakes attack him. Every way that they had to kill him, of course, with the weapons. Unperturbed and unaffected. So, after that, Hiranyakashipu was afraid, because that's a tremendous amount of strength. And so, he gave one last chance to the teachers to reform him. He said, well, he's still a young boy, we can get, No, instead Prahlad is preaching to his classmates. We just finished that wonderful chapter. He's giving them a whole philosophy of bhakti, and they're like it, and they're being turned, they're being corrupted, according to Hiranyakashipu. So that was the last straw. And now we're in the chapter 8, in which Hiranyakashipu finally wants to try to kill Prahlad himself, and Nrsimhadev comes out of a pillar, and you know the story. He annihilates him, rips him to shreds. So, but here we have this, Arjuna, after all of this, he says, I don't think I can do it. The famous verse, Chantalam hi mana Krishna pramati balavadridham tasaham nigraham manye vair eva sadushkaram. The famous verse. Chantalam. Chantalam means flickering, going here and there. The mind. Isn't it? If you just let the mind go, if you don't chant Hare Krishna, you don't read anything, you're not with devotees, you can go anywhere, right? The previous life, anywhere. So that's Chantalam. Pramati, it's very powerful and stubborn. Pramati, balavad, strong. Dridham. Tasyaham nigraham manye vayuriva sudushkaram. I think it's more difficult to control the mind than to control a raging wind. This is Arjun's, assessment. So Krishna says, yes, that's true, but it is possible to control with practice and determination. So he's encouraging Arjuna to try it. That was the previous verses, the 35 and 36. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult to work. And Arjuna, yes, bridling the mind is the problem, obviously. So it goes on like this, and now Arjuna is doubting that he can do it. He's asked, well, what happens if you bloop, basically? What happens if you deviate? What's the definition of the unsuccessful transcendentalist who takes to the process but desists to the worldly mindedness? And we have experience even in our own society. Sometimes it's hard to keep on the straight path and you go off, But nothing is ever lost in this process. That's the one. What is that verse right in the beginning in the second chapter? Neha brahmanashosti pratyabhayo navidyate swapamapya siddharmasya trayade mahato vayat. Very encouraging verse. It says, in this process of bhakti-yoga, naha iha abhikrama, this effort, neha bhikramanashosti, there is no loss, there is no destruction of what you attained in it. You made a little progress, that's with you, even in the next life. Pratyavayo navidyate. Suopam, even a little advancement on this path, protects one from the greatest fear, the most fearful, or the most fearful type of danger. What's the greatest danger? Who knows? Losing the human form of life. We finally got to the human form of life, and we can actually utilize it under proper instruction from the guru and the sadhu, and especially in the shastra, to not take birth again, to go back home, back to Godhead. You see, that only in this form, because of the intelligence, we can use it. So Krishna is encouraging us, even if you just make a little progress, you'll still have it. So why not try to go for it? That's the idea. So Arjuna is rejecting this. He's doubtful, and then in the present verse we just read, he compares it to a cloud, a broken cloud in the sky, which has no resting place. It's like if he's visualizing it. All right, I'm going to go to the Himalayas, because Krishna ultimately wants him to fight the battle. So but anyway, that's what he's described. But I'm not suited for that. So and if I'll fail, then I've lost my family, I've lost my job here, and I'm not a successful yogi, so I have nothing. I've lost everything. That's what the question is here. So, in every purport, Prabhupada brings it back home to that. Well, in this age, we can make really substantial progress and even succeed by bhakti-yoga, by centered on the chanting of the holy name. We don't have to go to the Himalayas. We don't have to, we maybe have to come to the temple, but that's easy. Compared, you don't have to go. You don't have to be alone, and you can take to the chanting of this mantra, which is the essence of the process that Lord Chaitanya gave. Lord Chaitanya is also the same Krishna, but he came only a mere 500 years ago rather than 5,000, and taught a process that's practical for this age, and it's supported right in our main shastra, the Bhagavatam. Well, this is a really nice verse to learn. Kale doshanade rajan asti eko mahadguna kirtanadeva krishnasya mukta sangha param vajet. So Kali Dosha means Dosanidhe. Dosanidhe means an ocean of faults. What is it? Kali Yuga, the age we're living in. Who can argue it? Even you don't have to know anything about Krishna consciousness to know what's going on. We're ruining the atmosphere. The war is about to start. It's tough, and it's only 5,000 years in. But anyway, it's definitely an ocean of faults. But Asti Eko Mahadgana, there's one very special quality to this age. Kirtanadeva Krishnasya Mukta Sangha Param Vrajet. Simply by the chanting of this holy name, both in congregation and individually, of Krishna's name. Kirtanadeva Krishnasya. Kirtan of Krishna's name. Mukta Sangha liberates one from the bondage of all the attachments that we've built over thousands of births to this world. You get liberated from that. The knots of the heart are cut. Mukta Sangha, Param Vrajet. You don't become without attachment. You transfer the attachment to Krishna. That's the whole idea. And you go back home, back to God. And Param Vrajet means you go to the supreme abode. It's feasible. It's possible. Prabhupada came and taught it, and he was following the orders of his spiritual master and the prediction of Lord Chaitanya. So, let's see what Krishna answers here. Actually, there's one more verse by Arjuna, text 39. Etan me sankshayam Krishna chetum arhasya sheshataha tvadanyak sankshayasya cheta na yupapadyate. This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. This is purport. Krishna is the perfect knower of past, present, and future. In the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord said that all living entities existed individually in the past, they exist now in the present, and they continue to retain individual identity in the future, even after liberation from the material entanglement. So Krishna, has already cleared up the question of the future of the individual living entity. Now, Arjuna wants to know of the future of the unsuccessful transcendentalist. No one is equal to or above Krishna, and certainly the so-called great sages and philosophers who are at the mercy of the material nature cannot equal him. Therefore, the verdict of Krishna is the final and complete answer to all doubts, because he knows past, present, and future perfectly, but no one knows him. Krishna and Krishna-conscious devotees alone can know what is what. And so, Arjuna is representing us. He's been put into this illusion by Krishna, so the Bhagavad Gita can be spoken. You see, he's an intimate friend of Krishna. He's ultimately not in Maya, but still he's apparently in Maya, and he's presenting all of these doubts and arguments that he can do it, and that therefore, what hope does he have? And so Krishna will dispel the doubt, and what he's saying is, don't worry, even if this is an expansion on that verse from the 2nd chapter, where he says, there's no loss or diminution. Well, what does that mean? It means that you take another birth, but you're born into a family that encourages a family of devotees is the best. Or at least a wealthy family. You don't have to worry, to survive in this world. And you're a wealthy but pious family, obviously. And you're able to continue your Krishna consciousness. So that's what Krishna will describe. But these are some famous verses here Prabhupada would quote, especially a few verses coming. Okay, Śrī Bhagavāna Vacha, text 40. Go ahead. Śrī Bhagavāna Vacha, Parthanaiveha Namutra, Vinashas tasya vidyate, nahi kalyana kaschid, durgatim tata gacchati. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Son of Prita, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. Purport. In the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17, Sri Narada Muni instructs Vyasadeva as follows. Tyaktva swadharmam chadanam bhajang hare bhajan apakvo tapate tato yadi yatra kvabhadrama bhuda mushyakim kovarta apt abhajatam swadharmataha. Translation. If someone gives up all material prospects and takes complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there is no loss or degradation in any way. On the other hand, a non-devotee may fully engage in his occupational duties and yet not gain anything. Close quote. For material prospects, there are many activities, both scriptural and customary. A transcendentalist is supposed to give up all material activities for the sake of spiritual advancement in life, Krishna consciousness. One may argue that by Krishna consciousness one may attain the highest perfection if it is completed, but if one does not attain such a perfectional stage, then he loses both materially and spiritually. That was Arjuna's argument. It is enjoined in the scriptures that one has to suffer the reaction for not executing prescribed duties. Therefore, one who fails to discharge transcendental activities properly becomes subjected to these reactions. The Bhagavatam assures the unsuccessful transcendentalists that there need be no worries. Even though he may be subjected to the reaction for not perfectly executing prescribed duties, he is still not a loser, because auspicious Krishna consciousness is never forgotten. And one so engaged will continue to be so, even if he is low-born in the next life. On the other hand, one who simply follows strictly the prescribed duties need not necessarily attain auspicious results if he is lacking in Krishna consciousness. The purport may be understood as follows. Humanity may be divided into two sections, namely the regulated and the non-regulated. Those who are engaged simply in bestial sense gratification without knowledge of their next life or spiritual salvation belong to the non-regulated section. And those who follow the principles of prescribed duties in the scriptures are classified amongst the regulated section. The non-regulated section, both civilized and non-civilized, educated and non-educated, strong and weak, are full of animal propensities. Their activities are never auspicious, because while enjoying the animal propensities of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, they perpetually remain in material existence, which is always miserable. On the other hand, those who are regulated by scriptural injunctions, and who thus rise gradually to Krishna consciousness, certainly progress in life. Those who are following the path of auspiciousness can be divided into three sections, namely 1, the followers of scriptural rules and regulations who are enjoying material prosperity, 2, those who are trying to find ultimate liberation from material existence, and 3, those who are devotees in Krishna consciousness. Those who are following the rules and regulations of the scriptures for material happiness may be further divided into two classes, those who are fruitive workers and those who desire no fruit for sense gratification. Those who are after fruitive results for sense gratification may be elevated to a higher standard of life, even to the higher planets, but still, because they are not free from material existence, they are not following the truly auspicious path. The only auspicious activities are those which lead one to liberation. Any activity which is not aimed at ultimate self-realization or liberation from the material bodily concept of life is not at all auspicious. Activity in Krishna consciousness is the only auspicious activity, and anyone who voluntarily accepts all bodily discomforts for the sake of making progress on the path of Krishna consciousness can be called a perfect transcendentalist under severe austerity. And because the Eightfold Yoga system is directed toward the ultimate realization of Krishna consciousness, such practice is also auspicious, and to one who is trying his best in that matter, and one who is trying his best in this matter, need fear no degradation. And no one who is trying his best in the matter need fear degradation. So Krishna is giving Arjun's hope here, is that whatever progress you make in a genuine transcendental process is permanent. And the first stage is understanding that you're not the body, that you're going to take birth again, right? We're going to have a future birth somehow. So being fixed in that understanding, one can take encouragement from the fact, okay, I'm not perfect in yoga, but I'll get another chance in my next life. And devotees can also be encouraged. You know, I don't think I'm going back to God at this lifetime. I have too many attachments, but I did do this service and I have been chanting and so forth, so there's no hopelessness there, you know. But there is hopelessness for the gross materialist. They don't even know that there's another life. And the chances are very high in this age, especially in Kali Yuga, that with all the demonic influences alive, that you lose the human form of life, which is the greatest tragedy. We've been going up and down for so many lifetimes, days and lifetimes of Brahma. Who knows how long we've been exiled from the spiritual world. But now, due to Srila Prabhupada's great mercy and efforts, he's given us this knowledge and set up this society and give us this association so we can actually cultivate Krishna consciousness. So we should try as hard as possible to make as much advancement as possible in this one lifetime. Confident that, you know, we're on the way back to Godhead, and the next life will be practicing again, you know. So this is a famous, Prabhupada would quote this verse a lot. It's in the instructions of Narada Muni to Vyasadeva to write the Bhagavatam. And so those of you who were here and heard the lectures by Ashram Maharaj, he was quoting from this section in several of his classes, in this verse also. So the idea is that if you give up your duties in the varnashram and you take to the worship of the lotus feet of Hari, but it is apakva. Apakva literally means uncooked. Is not complete or mature and falls away, then where is there any abhadra, anything inauspicious for him? It'll begin in the next life. You see the whole continuum. It may be some pause for a while, but where is there any auspicious thing for one who has no bhajan, who is not worshiping Krishna, but very nicely follows swadharma, his own dharma? You see, it's simply a frustrating and fruitless activity. Okay, we have time maybe for one more verse here with a short purport. So Krishna is saying, what will be the future? What will be the destiny of someone who tries but doesn't complete the course? Prapya punyakutam lokan pitam lokan ushidva shasvati smatsamaha shuchinam shimatam gehe yoga brashto bijayate. The unsuccessful yogi, after many, many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. Purport. The unsuccessful yogis are divided into two classes. One has fallen after very little progress, and one has fallen after long practice of yoga. The yogi who falls after a short period of practice goes to the higher planets where pious living entities are allowed to enter. After prolonged life there, one is sent back again to this planet to take birth in the family of a righteous Brahman, Vaishnav, or of aristocratic merchants. The real purpose of yoga practice is to achieve the highest perfection of Krishna consciousness, as explained in the last verse of this chapter. But those who do not persevere to such an extent, and who fail because of material allurements, are allowed, by the grace of the Lord, to make full utilization of their material propensities. And after that, they are given opportunities to live prosperous lives in righteous or aristocratic families. Those who are born in such families may take advantage of the facilities and try to elevate themselves to full Krishna consciousness. Now, this is one of the great blessings of being born in the Kali Yuga, is that where is the great righteous families you're going to be born into? I mean, I didn't come from one and I didn't know any. And so it's really, the last shall be first and the first shall be last. So that's in the Bible, So we're here in the last. We're, left over here in the Kali Yuga. We didn't go back to God in the Satya Yuga or the Treta Yuga or even the Dwapara Yuga. So here we are in the Kali Yuga. But there's one great blessing here. And this is another verse. This is in the 11th canto, shortly after the verse that defines the Yuga avatar of this age as Lord Chaitanya. Krishna Varnam Tvisha Krishnam Sango Pangasta Parshadam Yagyar Sankatana Praya Yajanti Hisumedis. It's right in the Bhagavatam, 11th canto. This is the teachings of the Yogendras. They're asking, well, what's the avatar for this age? And he describes. So Krishna Varnam, it has two different meanings. One is he belongs to the Varna, the category of Krishna. He is Krishna in a different form. And he's always chanting the syllables, Varna, Krishna, 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 hey. You read the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and you see that this was, Lord Chaitanya began the Sankirtan with that wonderful mantra, because Hare Krishna was the prime one. And then Tvisha Krishnam is the Tvisha Akrishnam. Akrishnam means not blackish, because we know Krishna is blackish, but Lord Chaitanya is not blackish. He's golden. Oh, okay, that's another thing. Saanga Upanga Astra Parshadam. He appears with his angas, his very limbs, the very intimate associates, like Advaita Acharya and Nityananda especially, and Srivas and Gadadhar. So these are the angas. And the upa-angas, those who are close to him, but little, his wider circle of, Lord Chaitanya's, etc., all of his associates, in Navadvip and outside. And Sangha, Upanga, Astra, his weapons. What's the weapons? He's standing there without a weapon. He's like this. The holy name. The holy name is his weapon. He doesn't kill the demons with that weapon, but he kills the demonic propensity in the heart. And so we can continue dancing and chanting, being purified. Yagya, now, so how to worship him. Yagya Sankirtana Praya, by performing the glorious Sankirtan Yagya. It's a sacrifice. Yes, you have to show up, you have to chant, and you have to move your feet and dance, and that's it. You know, it doesn't cost $1 million. You don't have to worry about ghee, paying the Brahmins. You know, none of that. That's the sacrifice. It's not much of a sacrifice at all. It's very joyful. Yeah, Sangha Praya, mostly, for the most part, is this chanting and dancing. But we know there are so many other services also. That's why it says praya, taking care of the temple and chanting in this way, you know, so many things. Yajanti hi sumedasa, that's the key. Sumedasa, you have to be intelligent. You have to be intelligent to take this up. But there it is. You know, what's easier? Come to the Hare Krishna temple, take part in the kirtan, listen a little bit to talk, take prasadam. That's how you go back to Godhead. Or is it easier to do the Ashtanga yoga, go to the Himalayas, sit there in a lonely place? Hare Krishna. You answered the question. So Krishna, but here Krishna is encouraging you. You know, you don't worry. You know, you won't be lost. You won't be a riven cloud. You'll be born in a family where you can continue your bhakti. But even better is text 42. One more. Atava yoginameva kule bhavati dimitam etad didurlabhataram loke janma yadidvisham. Okay, I'm sorry. Where's you got the mic?
I have a question about, does it mean that all people who were born in wealthy families they don't need it to, how to say, to survive, like you said? It means, does it mean that in previous lives they practice some yoga or some spiritual?
Not necessarily. No, especially in this age. You know, it can mean that you have good karma. You know, you were maybe a kind person, generous person, like that. But there doesn't really have to be any transcendental aspect to it. You can, you know, I mean, in this age, it's so hard to navigate without performing some grievous sinful activity, even unknowingly. You know, I'm a good person, but I'm not a vegetarian. No, you're not going to be born like an auspicious birth. No way. You know. But there are, I mean, there's this whole part of the Vedas, the Karma Kanda section of the Vedas, where you're performing, austerities and pious activities, and your goal is to take birth in the heavenly planet, or at least in a very nice family. So that can be part of it, you know. But generally, in this age, especially if you're not trained in the Vedic culture or anything, you're going to be performing sinful activities, and so the wealthy are more like, on the demonic side. You know, and that they're wealthy for one lifetime, and then boom, who knows how much suffering it goes on. We've read about that in the 5th canto. So Kali Yuga, the only hope, what is it? Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gataranyata, chanting. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. There's really only one alternative, otherwise who knows what's going to happen. Okay? In previous ages, it may be pious, wealthy families, and they're still like that in India to some degree. People like that.
Do we have time for a question?
Yeah, one more. One question.
The part that we were talking about here, where such birth is rare in this world, is that saying essentially that life isn't fair and the probability of achieving Krishna consciousness isn't fair, and some people just have no chance?
No, we all have a chance. Don't forget, he's talking here about the yogis. He's not really talking about Kali Yuga here. He's talking about Dwapara Yuga, what's happening. And so, after a long practice of yoga, one would take his birth in a family of transcendentalists who are surely great in wisdom. So this is a very rare birth. And certainly such a birth is rare in this world. And it's true, fast forward, I mean, Prabhupada is always bringing us back home to our own situation in these purports. So, just like ISKCON, right? I mean, there's so many children are born into ISKCON, right? And it's a great opportunity, you know, from childhood they're dancing and chanting and they're learning Krishna consciousness. So these are not ordinary souls who take birth in this family to actually be able to practice Krishna consciousness. So, but it's rare to be born in a family that's not only wealthy but also pious, you know, and is, you know, practicing Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada found that when he went to India. And he had his white elephants, you know, in 1970, he was dancing and he was really attracting a lot of attention. And he found that, like in Bombay, wonderful families who were wealthy, but then they could put him up and they put up all the devotees and they were giving donation, they're becoming life members and all these different things. So you find that, but you're not going to, you know, how many of their living, you know, natives of San Diego were like that? I don't know. I don't think you'd find it so much. The influence of this Western culture and this materialistic culture is so powerful in Kali Yuga. The only really hope is this, you know, loud chanting and very, you know, enthusiastic distribution of the knowledge in the form of the books and other programs, you know, so that people can take to it. And as soon as you begin Krishna consciousness, you know, your life is transformed. You're not going to take a birth as a dog or anything. You know, you're protected from the worst, from the greatest danger. But we want to try to make as much advancement as possible so that our next future birth will be most auspicious, and maybe 1 or 2 more births, or maybe no births. We should, you know, aspire to become perfected. Take the process seriously. Well, they're going to open those curtains in a few minutes. So, one quick poem. Okay. This is based on a verse by Rishabh, famous verse. Don't waste this precious human life, dear friend, by working hard for hoggish happiness. Through bhakti-yoga, worldly life transcend, and learn to taste divine love's endless bliss. With that thought, we'll adjourn and we'll wait the kirtan. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And we're very honored to